Hi, this is my YouTube channel, What's Wrong with the World and How to Fix It. I'm Dr. Terry Lay. The subtitle of the channel is History, Human Nature and Society Today. I'm interested in looking at some of the deeper issues which lie behind some of our current problems, and my background's in sociology, so I'm talking about typical sociological topics, but also topics of general interest. And as you can see, I'm wearing a great Aussie swim parka, which must mean I want to make Australia great again. Fascinating. Anyway, last time I spoke, I talked about sociology and human nature, and I suggested that although sociologists don't tend to acknowledge that they make use of a concept of human nature, they actually do all the time. And one of the I outlined what I thought was a theory of human nature that fitted with sociology, with a set of 6 basic drives, and they are things like hunger, sexuality, social desires, like for affection and so on, creativity, autonomy, and so on. Anyway, what was really obvious from that list is that from a lot of people's perspective is the missing element of human nature that I didn't talk about, or it would be aggression. And the idea is that there's a basic drive in humans for aggression, that in a sense they enjoy competitive aggression in conflict with other people. And the terrible human history of wars and so on would certainly make this an attractive theory. And so like this video and the next 2 after this are going to be concerned with that topic, and try and outline what I think is the sociological viewpoint which kind of makes sense of sociology and fits with what sociologists do and say about these topics. So it could be said that, is there a sociological view of aggression or whatever? It may be seen to be a psychological topic rather than sociology. In other words, we're asking about aggression as a part of the human, biological persona and so on. Is that really a question for sociology? My answer would be definitely yes. It is a question that sociologists have to think about all the time and make assumptions about, and actually do have a viewpoint on. And the main contest in this field is between the ideas of people who are called evolutionary psychologists, like an early version is Tiger and Fox writing on this topic, and then there's Desmond Morris, and then later, more recently, there's Steven Pinker, and of course Jordan as an example of this kind of view, which is quite common in society at large. I mean, that there's an urge to kill. This is part of human nature. And evolutionary psychologists see this evolutionary analysis of why there must be an urge to kill, and et cetera, as a much better account than the sociological view. And when they're talking about the viewpoint, which I think they assume is the sociological view, and they also think it's part of the dominant leftist view of the world and so on, it's that that it's, what do they call, human perfectibility. In other words, and this is all quotes from Tiger and Fox, that humans are born without evil propensities. So we can think of those little plastic dolls without any genitals, or a good example in literature would be Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where people are doped up with thing, which means they never have an aggressive thought. And like, according to evolutionary psychologists, that would be a sociologist's paradise. Nobody ever wants to do anyone any physical harm or damage them in any way, and there's no conflict and so on. And that we can socially construct the world to be like this. This is like what evolutionary psychologists regard this as a fantasy of sociology. And what I want to say about that is I think it's a really simplistic picture of where sociologists are coming from and what they actually think about these issues. And And in any case, I sort of think that the ideal of a perfectible human society, humans being perfectible and socially constructed to have no negative qualities, is a somewhat bizarre view. It's really necessary to look at what humans are actually like and talk about what works for humans as they actually are, rather than imagining some species that's totally perfect and so on. So now let me get on to the next part of the question, which is aggression a basic drive of human nature? And I want to set it up like that. I think that's the most useful way to set it up so you can understand where sociologists are coming from. It depends what you mean by these terms, aggression and the term human nature. So let me kind of make a statement, say, well, okay, in this video, this is what I'm going to mean by it. So I'm going to say aggression is intentionally doing physical harm to someone. So it's not just a conflict of wills in which you use some other kind of sanctions or motivations to get people to do what you want, or you resolve a conflict of wills some way or another. It's a situation where actually, aggression means going out and harming someone seriously and physically. So that's the first point. The second point is that human nature, okay, so there's a really broad way of looking at human nature and say everything that humans have in common is part of human nature, okay? So ears, look, there's an earlobe, other humans have got this, must be part of human nature. I don't look at it like that. I think when we talk about human nature, that's not actually what we mean. We mean, what are the motivations and basic desires common to human beings, not just other things that are common to them. And this becomes relevant to what I'm about to say. So if that's the question, okay, is aggression, meaning desire to do harm, etc., as part of the basic desire of human beings, then the question becomes, okay, so what is the sociological answer to this question? So I think sociologists believe there is no basic desire to do physical harm to other people as such. In other words, doing harm to other people is not a pleasure which we can all enjoy because of our human nature. We can compare this to other desires that we do take to be part of human nature, like say for food. Okay, we could say, well, okay, human beings all want to eat. They all have appetite for food and so on, and eating is a pleasure which human beings can enjoy, and unless things are really different and strange in their situation and so on, they will enjoy this. We could say the same about affection and say humans desire affection from other people, and again, it's something, without exceptional circumstances which we might want to talk about, they can enjoy the feeling of affection from other people. And so what we're saying is aggression is not like that. In other words, harming someone else is not something that that people generally enjoy, and like it's a pleasure which everyone should be educated to enjoy, and it's in your nature to enjoy it and so on. Sociologists have a slightly different view from that. Not to say that it can never be enjoyed, and I'll talk about that later. So the basic view of sociologists as I see it is this, that aggression is a tool rather than a basic drive. So it's a tool common to human beings, okay, rather than a basic motivation of people. So what the one way to put that is to say we are biologically enabled and want to harm people in situations where we are in conflict with them. They are blocking us from pursuing some desire or other. They're standing in the road, okay? So, for example, my household is at the moment having a conflict with our neighbour over the front, the front yard, right? So normally the front yard's a quiet place, and one of the bedrooms in the house is really close to the front yard. So this neighbour has driven his car out onto the street and left it on the street and created a vast carport in which he can do work, like industrial type work. And he loves power tools, so he's decided to run his power tools every minute of the day and night. Okay, so what's the conflict there? The conflict there is that he's preventing us from one of our great desires, which is to have a quiet office in the front bedroom to work out during the day. He makes that really difficult to do with these power tools, and there's no easy answer for us. He also overlooks us so that we feel like surveyed as well as kind of bludgeoned by vast amounts of noise. So in that situation, it is perfectly natural to feel aggression, you know, to feel a desire for aggression, to want to physically harm this person. That's what I would say. I think that is an aspect of human nature in that sense. So the aggression then is a tool, like both the capability of being aggressive and also the desire for aggression is a tool. It's like having an arm for grasping. Okay, you know, you need your arm to pick things up. Or you're having a sense of pitch, you know, like what note is higher than another, are very useful for music and understanding and appreciating music and so on. Or a capacity to use language to communicate with other people. These are all things that are common to people, but they're common as tools rather than basic desires. So why is this distinction important? Like, it might seem like I'm splitting hairs here, and, you know, no doubt evolution. I'll talk about that later on, but to some extent, that's one of the things that evolutionary psychologists say. There's no real distinction here. What do you want about? So just this is a sort of brief introduction to this topic in a way, because I will come back to it. But if aggression was a basic desire, there would only be one truly satisfying outcome to aggressive feelings, which would be engaging in aggression and actually, you know, doing physical harm. You couldn't deflect aggression, you know, like, oh, you have an ice cream. Excuse me, an ice cream just doesn't cut it at the moment. I want to smash this person's head in, right? And we would be like, as human beings, would be looking around for opportunities, excuses, anything, you know, like aggression. You know, one of the greatest pleasures of life. So, you know, like, oh yeah, here's an opportunity. Oh, let's do it. Okay. So by contrast, if aggression is a tool, we might be well satisfied by some other solution. You know, if there's something else that can cut the mustard, as it were, and like make it possible for us to go about our business without harming people, or they get out of our hair in some way, then we stop feeling these aggressive desires. So I'll take the example of the guy next door again and say, you know, like, okay, so maybe a solution of going to talk to him about the noise, and he agrees to not to use power tools, you know, in the front yard, but only in the backyard where it's not such a big problem for us, and only up till the hours of 7 o'clock, and after 8 o'clock in the morning, yeah, that might work. And so if he engages in that, and maybe we'll just put up a little screen so we don't feel visually overlooked in the front yard, even though he might be kind of doing quiet work in the front yard in his carport, whatever, then what will actually happen is that those aggressive feelings will diminish and gradually recede and probably even vanish altogether. I mean, I had an experience once of an awful boss at work who was head of our school, and basically they made it really difficult for us to run sociology the way we wanted to and with the way we thought would attract students and stuff like that. Well, when that person ceased to be head of school, then I ceased to have any violent or aggressive fantasies about in relationship to that person. You know, what was the point? And in fact, we, as colleagues, after that person had left that position, we got on famously, and there was quite a degree of affection. So that's typical. I think if we think of aggression as a tool, these kind of examples make heaps of sense. What I'd also like to say is that this kind of analysis of aggressive behaviour is really common, and it's not just in sociology, but in everyday explanations of things, and and the weirdest thing in a way is that, like, the people like evolutionary psychologists who talk about aggression as a basic desire and urge to kill and so on, they use these explanations themselves. I mean, you can catch them out at this, like Steven Pinker. He's one of the big evolutionary psychologists who talks about the stupidity of the sociological and left-wing view and and he has a whole rave on drug gangs in the United States. And what does he say about these drug gangs? He says, okay, they use a lot of violence. You know, there's a lot of shooting, and, you know, like, unfortunately, in certain periods of recent American history, that's absolutely true. And he says the reason is that the people running these drug gangs are running them as a business. They intend to make money. And because this business is illegal, there's no police. They can't call in the police to protect their business if someone wants to steal their drugs. They can't call in the police if they have a contract with someone to supply them and then they get less than the true supply and so on. So they make use of illegitimate, illegal violence and aggression in this. So it's really interesting. He doesn't say the reason for this gang violence is just that gangs just love to kill people and, you know, they can't wait to get out there and kill people. No, he doesn't say that at all. He has this whole other economic explanation. Yeah, why is that? Because that's exactly how aggression functions. It's a tool. All right, I'm going to ask another few brief questions before finishing this video. Do people enjoy being violent? You know, like, in a way, that's a problem for my analysis, right? Because, you know, like other desires, like food, you know, like you enjoy eating, it's sex, you enjoy having sex, you know, good companionship, you enjoy having good, you know, aggression. Well, if it's just a tool, how come some people enjoy it and it's enjoyed? Okay, so there's a number of explanations and they're sort of different. And my analysis would be sometimes people enjoy being aggressive and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're aggressive to use aggression as a tool without necessarily enjoying it as such. You know, that happens. There's no two ways about that. Like lots of soldiers in modern armies are in that situation. They don't actually enjoy killing people, but they do it because they're getting paid to do it and and the government believes that it's useful to get various things happening and so on and so forth. So what are the basic and general reasons why people might enjoy aggression in a particular case? Well, it's a means to get your own way. Okay, so autonomy is a basic desire of people. Getting what you want is a basic desire of people. Sometimes the only way to get what you want is by aggression, or maybe not the only way, but a way to get what you want is aggression. And so you can't really separate them. You'll maybe enjoy the aggression because you know by doing that you're going to achieve what you want. So that's one thing I'd say. The second thing is that it can be a response to injury or payback, so that people can't feel injured. You know, they're socially harmed. Their social persona, their esteem is harmed by someone else having been aggressive to them. And when they are aggressive back, they feel like the balance has been restored and they enjoy that process, even though the aggression itself is just a necessary means to that end. A third way, aggression can be a means of taking risks and getting excitement. There's no doubt about that. Lots of people who have been in armies or just warriors or whatever enjoy aggression for its excitement value. And I mean, I don't think sociologists need to deny that. But just I suppose what we'd say about that situation is there are lots of ways to enjoy the risks of creatively constructing the world, and aggression is just one of them, and probably not a good one in many cases. So that you know, like so example, obviously there are sports where people take risks, you know, like surfing or skydiving or you know, like contact sports like football and so on. But there's also things like making music or writing a book or whatever, all of which create excitement, adrenaline rush, and, you know, the sense of you doing something and so forth. One you also say that it could be regarded as a character trait. So in other words, certain people, and this is not everybody, it's in that sense, it's not part of human nature to be like this, but it is possible to train people in particular ways so that they will take aggression as something they enjoy doing because they've been trained to experience it as a pleasure. In other words, they've been rewarded through other kinds of human desires to enjoy this activity. They've been awarded by status, they've been awarded by material goods, they've been awarded by sex, they've been rewarded, you know, like, so they can come to enjoy aggression in this context. So people can be socially rewarded for violence. And I mean, that is the heart of what evolutionary psychologists hate about the sociological view, because it's obviously true that socially rewarding people for aggressive behavior does create character traits, create people who are aggressively disposed, let's say. And the other thing that sociologists will say is that people can be damaged by childhood trauma. You know, just like people can take drugs, you know, like to dull the pain of childhood trauma late into their life, you know, like many analyses point out. So similarly with aggression, that it can be a kind of displaced anger. I mean, the anger that you originally felt towards your father who was beating you up or being you know, a turd or whatever, is displaced, and then later on it comes out in angry and aggressive behavior. Like there's a chain of angry behavior going down from one generation to another, or from one person to another person, and so on. So this last one, the character trait thing, is the basic sociological account of what you could call excessive aggression. This is aggression which otherwise we regard as unmotivated. You know, the term unmotivated is very characteristic of this terrain, and why it's there is because aggression is a tool. So the motive is what provides the basic drive, right? And then aggression is the means by which that drive is satisfied. So the term used in the most general way for that is motive. And so unmotivated, if a sociologist want to explain unmotivated excessive aggression, they often turn to this stuff about various kinds of character trait. And in the third lecture, I'm going to get into talk, rave. I'm going to get into talking about that. So, you know, like this is the second one's going to be on where evolutionary psychologists, well, what they would argue against what I'm saying, you know, and how I argue back, and well, it's very cyclical. And then the last one is going to be about what are the basic reasons why there's so much excessive aggression in the world, in world history and so forth. And yeah, just wait for it. That'll be good. Anyway, and then as the final question, what I'm going to now talk about is aggression always wrong? And this sounds like a moral and ethical question rather than a sociological question. Well, all I'd say about that is sociologists are interested in what sort of things do harm or what sort of things benefit people, and you know, what are the various solutions to harmful effects in the world, in society, and so on. So you can't really avoid these topics. Now, the question is aggression always wrong? Sociologists will ask always, for whom? You know, like, might be good for this person, bad for that person. That'd be a classic. I mean, you could say this is a very relativist and immoral position, but all I'd say is it's typical of sociology as a science that that's exactly how they will look at it. So let me ask that question. In the most general way, you know, just generalizing madly here about what are the likely people and their various, you know, problems, etc. with aggression. Let's do that. Okay, so let's just talk about the target of aggression. The person who is suffering from aggression, right? So obviously there's the damage to health and physical comfort that comes with being physically attacked. You know, you might even lose your life, but you'll certainly, you know, won't be good. The second thing is the damage to your autonomy, because this person is using this physical sanctions against you in a way that makes it very hard for you to get what you want. You know, if you think, God, I'd love that wonderful, oh, look at that, oh, let's say a Volvo. Look at that amazing Volvo over there. Oh, wouldn't I like that? No. And you go over there and you steal the Volvo and you end up by being bundled off by the police and carted into jail. Yeah, well, the police are using aggression against you in a way that prevents you from getting your desire. So this happens all the time, all right? So there's a damage to autonomy from the target of aggression. And there may be other kinds of damage depending on the context, you know, like damage to your esteem, you know, damage to your enjoyment of sex. I mean, all sorts of different possibilities could flow from an aggressive act against you. So, I mean, none of that's all this, I mean, you know, none of this is rocket science, and we all know this in a way. But what I want to talk about now is for the aggressor, the person doing the aggression. And in a sense, why sociologists are so ambivalent, why the left, let's say as well, is so ambivalent about aggression. Okay, so let's be honest first and say what you might get out of aggression. So if you're the person doing the aggressive act, you may be successful in getting what you want by aggression. you know, like Captain Cook and the White Armies of England obviously got the whole of Australia by aggression. So there's no doubt that you might get what you want by aggression. So in a sense, good for the good or for the perpetrator, let's say, or the aggressor, and obviously bad for the people on the end of the aggressive act. There also could be a social reward and status in being aggressive, and there are a lot of societies where, you know, being a brave warrior and so on, and being aggressive, it gets other people in your community to think you're just a great hero and so on. Okay, so these are the good sides, but obviously there are some downsides to being aggressive too. First of all, there's the dangers and risks of aggression. I mean, let's not minimize that. You know, going off to fight people is very dangerous to your health, whether you're doing it with a stone axe or with a machine gun or a nuclear weapon. I mean, basically, there are huge risks in aggression because, you know, other people take a dim view of it, obviously. And they feel perfectly justified in responding in kind. But as well as that, and look, and you know, this may make me sound like a terrible hippie, but you deny yourself the enjoyment of giving and receiving affection from the other person. I mean, this is the great universal downside of aggression, almost like, you know, ironclad guarantee that they'll hate you, and that they're not going to like you, and they're not going to be happy with the way you're behaving. And so you cut yourself off from a whole lot of people who otherwise might be your friends and might be your allies. You know, like, let me return to the guy with the fence next door and so on. Same thing there. I mean, you know, as a mate next door, it's hugely important to me that I make that work. You know, like, there's also, it's nice to know this person. You know, you know, he's got a lot of good sides, and then there's grapes and pears and, you know, all these sort of little gifts and so on. So, you know, you don't want to sort of get on his wrong side. And certainly I wouldn't want to get on his wrong side by being aggressive. That would be a huge disaster. But even a conflict pursued to extremes would not be good. So I think I'll finish this talk now. And then next time I talk on this topic, I'm going to talk about why evolutionary psychologists are so convinced that there's an urge to kill, and what are their arguments, and how can we talk about them.